Now, most people are familiar, if you've got a Volkswagen or an Audi, you're familiar with VCDS software, formerly known as VAGCOM, and this is absolutely essential to have if you're going to diagnose any modern Volkswagen or Audi. Now, on the OBD ones like this is a 93, there is a special adapter you need to access it. Instead of using the typical OBD2 port here, it's going to use this adapter to a 2+2. So that connector is in this car underneath the shift boot. So we're going to go ahead and gotta insert the key, shift it into neutral to be able to lift this, slide it back, and we get access. You can see it is right under there, so very conveniently placed. Slide this out of the way and we should be able to rotate things and get to where we need to get. So that's what needs to plug in for these guys here. And then the adapter plugs in like so. And it's been so long since I've used this software on here that it thinks that I do not have, that I've never plugged it in before. So we're going to go ahead and just save the settings. We're going to do an auto scan on this car. I'm going to turn the motor on. I'm going to select Volkswagen Corrado, and we're going to let it run, and it's going to take about 10 minutes to do a scan on an older car like this. So going to let that do its thing and see if it comes back with some error codes on the transmission that might give me an idea of where to start looking for the issues it is apparently enjoying right now. And it finished a miraculously fast scan, came back with no fault codes for the engine, which is wonderful. However, here we go under automatic transmission. We found 6 faults. So 2 of the solenoid valves have an open circuit, which means there is probably a connector that is dirty. May would have gotten fouled by the rain that I was driving in. Very possible. It's also possible the ECU got wet, and that has fouled that. We've got an open circuit for the transmission fluid sensor is giving me an error code, and I also have an error code saying that the ATF temperature is too high. So running it under load up that hill this morning, apparently the motor was not happy. The transmission was not happy with that, and I've overheated the transmission. And it looks like we also have an engine speed sensor intermittent issue. That could also be an issue due to rain and water getting into those connectors that are really not very well protected. And now that it's 25 years old with 203,000 miles, the little rubber gaskets have definitely dry rotted and deteriorated, and they are not doing a great job of keeping everything sealed. So I think what we can do is to let the car cool down, and then I'm going to go ahead and open all of those connectors in the engine compartment. Let's take a look at those. So down here around the transmission, you're going to see a bunch of these electrical connectors, at least a couple of important ones, namely right here and right here. We're going to open those, and we are going to clean them, put some lubrication on them, and then we will clear the codes after letting it cool down, and hopefully that gets us where we need to go. So it does appear that the problem was indeed I overheated the transmission in my efforts to warm up the catalytic converter this morning, doing all those high rev pulls up the hill under load. So now that I've let it cool down, I cleaned all those connectors, put some lubrication on them, made sure that there weren't any open faults. I did find water inside one of the connectors that was exposed out there in the engine bay. So again, 25-year-old O-rings and seals and gaskets, and they were letting water in, so that caused some open circuits to ground, as well as I did overheat it. I did see that error code. Between the two of those, the transmission ECU decided to put itself into limp mode, which only gave me third gear. So now that it's cooled down and I've cleared the codes and I've cleaned those connectors, shift it down into first gear here, and we've got normal transmission operation. Shift it into second. Yep, we're happy. So the transmission is operating as it should, which means I should be able to go back and test for smog. Well, part of me is bummed that my transmission doesn't appear to have completely failed, even though it has 203,000 miles on it. This automatic is still hanging in there, and it was just an electrical fault and then my own fault for driving it too hard right before test and throwing it into limp mode. But so I'm a little bit bummed that I don't have the excuse to throw in my manual 6-speed transmission just yet. But I am excited that I do get to go get this car smogged and officially certified to be back on the road, which is a good thing because there's car shows coming up and events after this whole coronavirus quarantine lets up. So anyway, I'd like to have the car ready for that. So I'm taking it back up to the smog place. They said they could fit me right back in, and we'll see how she does. Hopefully she's running clean enough to pass and gives a clean bill of health, and we're then going to be off to the DMV to get the paperwork done to get her officially re-registered and roadworthy. Right now I have a temporary permit from them to be operating. And yeah, anyway, we'll see how it goes. But anyway, it's always an adventure with a Corrado. Anybody who has one knows that being just the quirky, weird beasts that they are, they're always going to throw something interesting at you. So, assuming that she does pass smog, and assuming that there aren't any issues when I go to get the physical inspection down at the DMV, because I got flagged for that as a result of, some of you may know that 2 years ago, driving into the big SoCal Euro event, some lovely person decided to cross 3 lanes of traffic and drive into me as I was entering the car show, and that resulted in the car not being on the road for over a year while I was gathering parts to get it roadworthy. And the registration, I did keep it in planned non-operation, but due to whatever insurance reason, when I went to go pay my fees to re-register and bring her back up to speed, the DMV said that I had to not only do smog, I had to go do a physical inspection so that they could check to make sure that the car was properly repaired. So, yeah, got to do that. So they're going to be checking to make sure my headlights are working and my turn signals are working and all that good stuff. All that is working. So, but you know, being a Corrado, you never know. So I'll get the smog test, and then hopefully after the smog test, be able to head straight down to the DMV, get that taken care of, and get my registration stickers and be official and fully road certified. We'll see how that goes. In the meantime, why don't you leave me some comments about what projects you are working on at your home? What weird car are you trying to nurse back to health? Do you have a Corrado? Is it a G60? If so, I shall pray for your soul. I think I went through 7 superchargers with my G60 in the 16 years that I had it. So, you know, that's the ticking time bomb. You never know when it's going to happen. You know it's going to. Even if you change the timing belt on that supercharger faithfully, like I did every 20,000 miles, you just never know. It's going to blow up, especially if you drive it hard, which, let's be real, I drove that car really hard. This car I've been a lot easier on. It's been more of a grand tourer rather than a race car. Obviously, with the automatic transmission, it's not quite as likely to take on the track, although I have taken it on the track for, you know, not racing events, but just open track events. I've taken it to Qualcomm Stadium for their drag racing. It's 8th mile, so it wasn't anything crazy. You know, you get up into 3rd gear, and that's about it with an 8th mile. And that was just for fun, but, you know, I took our minivan to that too, so, you know, it's just a fun thing, not serious racing. My approach with drag racing is that, you know, it's a great test of how much money you can throw at a car, not a real test of driving skill. That's my own personal opinion. I know that drag racers are offended by that, but whatever. I like to drag race. It's fun, but really, somebody who has more money than you is going to have a faster car, and that's just always going to be the story.